Hey guys, my name is Catherine. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Missing the Missing. In this episode number 28, we're going to be talking about Georgina Gharsallah. Georgina Amira Gharsallah was born on Thursday, October 29, 1987, in Brighton, East Sussex, UK, to her mother, Andrea Francis Gharsallah, and her father, Gassim Gharsallah. Gassim was born in Libya and attended Brighton University in the UK, where at the age of 22 he met 18-year-old Andrea, and the two would go on to marry first in Italy in 1979 before following up the celebrations in Libya with a traditional Libyan wedding. The couple already had a daughter, Sarah, before they welcomed Georgina into the world. The Gharsallahs resided in Gassim's native Libya and returned to the UK to have Georgina before returning to Libya when Georgina was 6 weeks old. A few years later, their family grew with the addition of Georgina's twin sisters, Arij and Sonia, completing the family unit. The family would return to the UK each summer for 6 weeks, and in 1998, when Georgina was 10 years old, the family returned to the UK full-time as it was proving difficult for Gassim to treat his diabetes in Libya. They settled down in Worthing, a seaside town in West Sussex, England, at the foot of the South Down Chalk Hills. Andrea was a carer and Gassim worked in the food retail industry, selling fruit and vegetables in specialised stores for Red's Brasserie or Viva Southern Limited, which he would go on to manage. Over time, Andrea and Gassim grew apart, divorcing, with the children remaining with Andrea. Georgina, who tended to go by George to her family and close circle of friends, went to the Orchards Junior School and then on to the Davison Secondary School for Girls, both in Worthing. As she grew and developed her personality, she was described as confident, loving, affectionate, and vivacious. She was known to be sensitive and sociable and outgoing, lively and family-oriented. Those who knew her said that Georgina was articulate, intelligent, and streetwise, though perhaps a little naive on account of her spontaneity and impulsivity. She had a trusting nature and a tendency to take everyone at face value. At the age of 15, she began to drink alcohol and smoke, habits which would later develop into binge drinking and cannabis use, though she was not described as addicted to or dependent on either. It was at this age also that Georgina's bulimia journey began, a struggle that she continued to battle with throughout her adult life. Andrea spoke with Georgina about this numerous times and asked her to seek help, even speaking with her own doctor to see what else she could do to possibly help. Andrea recalls that Georgina would read about her condition and that on several occasions Georgina did come up into my bedroom late at night and lie on my bed with me, talking about the bulimia and consequences, noting that it seemed to have become quite distressing for Georgina when she learned how it affected your body and even your lifespan. Despite her personal battles, Andrea explained, Georgina was the cheeky one. If someone was doing something naughty, it would be her. She was active, friendly, fun, personable. Playing in the park as a child, she'd always make a new friend. Andrea went on to say that sometimes she didn't like going out by herself, but she's very outgoing too, especially if she's had a drink. She'll make friends and talk to anybody. That's what worries me, because I know how friendly and personable she is. She accumulates friends wherever she goes. She's quite excitable too. Once she gets something in her mind, she'll keep on and on about it. It was at this time that people started to notice Georgina becoming somewhat unreliable, with her mother, Andrea, noting she was easily influenced. When she was with somebody, their ideas rubbed off on her. I noticed that quite a lot. In time, Georgina began to suffer with some anxiety, struggling to maintain relationships. She usually worked in office administration, and regarding her career aspirations, Andrea remembered that she had wanted to work in an office where she could dress smartly, but Georgina struggled to hold down jobs. Throughout her challenges, though, she continued to enjoy spending time with her family, with whom she was always in contact. Andrea explained that Georgina would text her at all hours of the day and night, and would borrow a phone to text her if hers was out of credit. Georgina is very open, and she tells us everything. Georgina was wayward but conscious, practicing mindfulness, attending meditations at a local Buddhist center with her mother, with whom she would also go running. Andrea explained, she would be willing and motivated, but not necessarily with sticking power. She also enjoyed cooking. As a young woman, Georgina began a relationship with somebody with whom she would go on to have 2 sons, first being Alfie in 2009, with his brother Hayden following later in 2010. The relationship broke down, but the pair would share custody of their children, who would stay with their father during the week and with Georgina of a weekend. The children would also visit their mother during the week and for longer periods during the summer. Andrea explained that Georgina was a devoted mother. She would do anything for the boys. Whatever else was going on in Georgina's life, she was always thinking about the children, planning things to do with them. Georgina met and started a relationship with somebody else 6 months prior to her disappearance, moving in with him. In the lead up to her disappearance, this relationship also faltered. Between 10 days and a month before she vanished, she split up with her boyfriend and moved back in with her mother in her Normandy Road home in an attempt to sort herself out. She was between jobs at the time and continued to see her ex-partner regularly after the breakup. She continued to socialise and would occasionally stay with friends in nearby Brighton, where her sisters lived and where she stated she wanted to move. Georgina was not described as depressed or despondent despite the breakdown of her relationship. Andrea explained that Georgina took pride in and put a lot of effort into her appearance. She favoured skinny jeans and always liked to look girly and elegant without too much makeup. She was a fast walker, and at the time of her disappearance, Georgina was described as a 30-year-old female with a light complexion and a slim build. She has mixed Caucasian and Arabic heritage and was described as looking white with Arabian features. She was 5'4" or 165 centimeters tall and of a slim build. She had long, shoulder-length dark hair which, if not straightened, was often worn in a top knot or a messy bun. She has a Monroe piercing above her top left lip, so named after Marilyn Monroe's mole. She was last seen wearing a fitted grey River Island coat with a large white faux fur collar and fluffy trimmed hood, black skinny jeans, a grey jumper and a cream scarf. She wore ankle boots that were either flat-soled and grey or chunky-heeled and black. She was carrying either a black or grey satchel bag, an orange plastic carrier bag, and a white Tesco carrier bag. The bags contained a soda can, paperwork or letters, a variety of mobile phones including a Nokia Lumia 520, a vape, and potentially a white-coloured Nintendo DS in a box. Georgina has dual British and Libyan nationality and speaks both English and Arabic, with potentially also some Albanian. Notably, Georgina can look drastically different from photograph to photograph, so please look carefully at the different pictures in case you recognise one of them. On Wednesday, March 7th, 2018, at approximately 7:30 or 7:45 hours, Andrea was getting ready to go to work and saw Georgina downstairs in the lounge, sitting on the floor, straightening her hair. Over breakfast at around 8 o'clock, Andrea recalls that Georgina seemed a bit agitated, disclosing that she was having problems with her mobile phone and that it wasn't working properly and wouldn't hold a charge. Andrea remembered her asking, "How am I going to do anything without a phone?" As a result, Andrea gave Georgina an old phone of her own, which was spare, but that required a SIM card. Georgina explained that she would go to a phone store to get the phones fixed and asked to borrow a couple of pounds from her mother. Andrea explains that, "I moaned a little bit, and I said that she needed to sort herself out, but I gave her the money." Andrea called Georgina's father to ask if he could buy a cheap mobile phone for their daughter until she could get her phone fixed or obtain a replacement. Georgina then told her mother that she had some other errands to run in town. After seeking advice about the phones, she would go to the Citizens Advice Bureau, then on to an appointment at the Job Centre Plus in Worthing Town Centre, time unknown, before meeting with her father later that morning at a location unknown to collect the phone from him. It's not clear who left the home first, but both said goodbye and see you later to each other, with Andrea leaving to go to work and Georgina adding her usual "I love you mummy, see you at home" before leaving to go to Worthing Town Centre at approximately 9:30. Sometime between 9:45 and 10:10, Georgina entered the Clifton Food and Wine shop on Clifton Road, approximately a 10-minute walk from where she was living with her mother at the time. The time is generally believed to be at about 9:50. She was captured on CCTV footage and appeared to be in good spirits, smiling and animated, and had 2 plastic carrier bags in her possession as previously described. She spoke with the shopkeeper about her options regarding the phones in her possession, though he apparently directed her instead to a mobile phone repair shop that the specifics of which are not known. She left the shop after about 5 minutes, turning right and heading up Clifton Road towards the town centre. Georgina did not attend her appointment at the job centre and did not make it to see her father. Her mother wasn't immediately surprised or concerned when she returned home from work that night to find Georgina absent. Despite the recent breakup, she had been spending a lot of time over the prior week with her ex at his home and would also often stay with friends. Over the next few days, the family noticed her absence, sending her messages every day and asking each other whether they had heard from her, though assumed nothing was wrong and felt that she could have gotten back together with her ex. When Georgina's sons arrived at Andrea's home for their scheduled visit with their mother on Saturday, and Georgina didn't turn up, the family began to worry. Their calls weren't getting through, but they were aware that her phone hadn't been working. Andrea also considered that Georgina may have been ignoring her, as she was annoyed after Andrea had told her that she needed to get her life in order. A day or so later, Georgina's on-off boyfriend contacted Andrea to ask whether she had heard from Georgina. Andrea replied, "No, I thought she was with you," but he explained that he hadn't seen her for 10 days since the breakup. Andrea didn't know what to say. Georgina was spontaneous and had plenty of friends, even remaining friends and enjoying drinks with some of her ex-partners. Andrea felt that she could have been taking time to herself after the breakup, or that she may have met somebody else. Georgina had also been spending time staying over with her friends in Brighton. Concern began building, but the family dismissed their fears, feeling that there were any number of reasonable explanations for the lack of contact. Over the coming days, as Georgina failed to respond to family messages, they began contacting all of her friends on social media, asking if anyone had heard from her, but nobody had. They became anxious at this point. Andrea remembers, "I worried she was in hospital and nobody knew who she was. But even then, it didn't enter their minds that Georgina could be missing." Andrea explained that, "We started calling hospitals ourselves, but they said they couldn't tell us due to data protection. Even then, none of us thought it was something serious." The family agreed to wait until the following weekend to see if Georgina would turn up. When her young sons attended for their weekend visit, however, Georgina didn't show up. The family could no longer suppress their alarm and contacted Sussex Police on Saturday, March 17th to report Georgina missing, 10 days after she was last seen. Already on the back foot, the initial investigation was slow to get off the ground. Police conducted cell site analysis of Georgina's mobile phone, which indicated that the last time it had been used was at 3 o'clock in the morning of her disappearance. It is not known what this was: text, call, incoming, outgoing, who the recipient was, etc. The phone was still registered on the network until approximately 11 to 11:30 hours that morning, before it disconnected for the last time. At that point, it had pinged to a cell tower near her mother's home in Worthing. Pings refer to periodic signals sent to mobile devices. If connected to a network, the device will detect the signal and submit a signal in response, which will bounce off a nearby cell tower, indicating the device's approximate location. It is believed that Georgina's phone remained connected to the same mast until it dropped off the network, indicating that at least her phone, if not Georgina herself, remained in the same approximate location during that time. The phone never reconnected to the network and has never been located. The old handset borrowed from Andrea was also traced via the IMEI number, and to date has also never been used with another SIM card. Whilst we do know that Georgina had 2 phones with her on the day of her disappearance, one was not functional due to not having a SIM card, and the other, her own, she had reportedly had problems with. However, Sussex police reported that Georgina was seen with a number of mobile phones in her possession, which has caused some confusion. Andrea confirms that Georgina had only the 2 phones in her possession and was scheduled to collect another from her father later that day, but never made it. Police also conducted financial inquiries and discovered that Georgina's bank accounts and cards had not been used since a few days prior to her disappearance and were not used in the aftermath. Georgina failed to attend her job centre appointment or meet with her father as planned. It is reported that police took Georgina's hairbrush for DNA testing. It transpired that in the days before her disappearance, Georgina had spent some time sitting in a hotel in Brighton until the early hours, the Royal Albion. It has been reported that Georgina had been waiting for somebody she knew who was working in the area until late at the time. It is suggested that whilst a male relative of this person was staying at the hotel, Georgina felt more comfortable waiting in the lobby. However, Andrea corrects this rumour, stating that they went there because it was so late and there was a bar open and somewhere to sit until Georgina got the early train back to Worthing. Having personally done something similar at times myself, I can attest to the plausibility of this. Despite the slow start, police soon began to treat the case as suspicious and on March 26th referred the investigation to the Major Crime Team. After 17 days, the case was escalated from missing person status to a possible major crime. Andrea's family and ex-partner, along with various acquaintances, were cleared early on. Georgina's friends and relatives were interviewed and a number of searches were conducted, including of Andrea's home, where Georgina lived at the time. Her ex-boyfriend's properties were also searched, but there was nothing to indicate where Georgina could have gone. Sussex police issued over a dozen public appeals for information, including on social media and their websites and YouTube channel. For the first 3 to 5 months, communication between the family and the police was regular, with Andrea explaining they seemed to be quite active. However, family claimed that this soon tapered off after the 6-month mark, with communications becoming less frequent despite being allocated a family liaison officer. Police obtained CCTV footage from a variety of locations throughout the Worthing area, but explained that, sadly, we have had limited success in locating Georgina on those cameras. Although there are an estimated 1,000 CCTV cameras in Worthing Town Centre, only one further CCTV clip surfaced of particular relevance, which had been retrieved in April 2018, but not viewed until much later in the investigation, as Sussex police did not believe Georgina had headed towards the centre. The footage was from approximately 3:30 to 4 o'clock on March 7th, 2018, the day of Georgina's disappearance, about 5.5 hours after the last known sighting of her in the Clifton Food and Wine shop that morning. The clip shows a female, believed to be Georgina, walking with an unidentified female along Chapel Road near the Subway store in the centre of Worthing, about half a mile or less than 1 kilometre from the Clifton Road shop. The unidentified woman is carrying bags, but Georgina's bags are missing and her clothing appears to have changed. DCI Andy Wolstenholme came onto the investigation in May, June time and reviewed the case, asking for the footage to be analysed. When he met with the Gharsallahs in August 2019 and they confirmed the female on the footage was Georgina, Wolstenholme released the footage explaining that police were keen to identify the other woman in the clip. The Gharsallah family became frustrated with the police investigation, explaining, "We've had to take the lead in the investigation and have been forced to because the police have been so reluctant to do the basics, never mind go the extra mile." They started their own inquiry, setting up an incident room at the Royal Arcade in Worthing to offer a safe space for people who don't want to talk to the police or Crime Stoppers. They made and distributed over 500 flyers around the local area near to where Georgina was last seen, and created a social media campaign to raise awareness of Georgina's case. Andrea was frequently seen putting posters up around town and uploading video appeals on social media, one of which was seen over 10,000 times. She contacted and began working with the Missing People charity. A fundraising page was also set up to raise £20,000 for a reward, which was supported by local businesses, but sadly this eventually fell through. Family members enlisted the help of volunteers, including a local ex-fireman, to search places of interest around Worthing, and consulted with retired police and NCA detectives to review the investigation. Allegedly, a friend of the family who worked for Interpol wrote a letter to the police explaining that Georgina was vulnerable due to her bulimia and history of drinking. There were multiple reported sightings of Georgina, though none of them were officially confirmed, with many potential witnesses coming forward to family, but changing their accounts when speaking with police. Others were found to be cases of mistaken identity. There were reported sightings as far away as Leeds, though the specific details are unknown. Banners were put up across Broadwater Bridge in response to an unconfirmed sighting after a witness told family they had seen Georgina on or near the bridge on the day she disappeared. Again, when contacted by police, the witness changed their story. On April 20th, 6 weeks after Georgina disappeared, a witness claimed they saw her on the day of her disappearance on Tarring Road at the junction of Clifton Road between 7 and 8 p.m, though this account was subsequently dismissed by police, for what reason is unknown. Investigative journalist Donald McIntyre said that one witness who had known Georgina for 10 years claimed to have seen her between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. on the day she disappeared, near to a Tesco supermarket. At the time, she appeared to have been having a heated discussion with two men before the trio walked off in the direction of the station. When this was followed up by police, however, the CCTV footage that was supplied had been incorrectly downloaded and could not be viewed, meaning the sighting remains unverified. The family have also consulted several psychics in their search for Georgina and their quest for answers. Over the course of the investigation, Sussex Police explored ways they could reach out to different audiences and demographics, with DCI Andy Wolstenholme explaining, "We have issued facts, photos and videos in the hope of triggering someone's memory. We have worked with her family to get their heartfelt appeals spread far and wide." 484 police actions were raised, with police taking thousands of statements and investigating over 90 reported sightings to no avail. They have searched 27 areas and written over 427 officers' reports. Approximately 2,000 residents were spoken with in relation to Georgina's disappearance, including over 1,000 house-to-house inquiries, and hundreds of exhibits have been examined. Sadly, however, Georgina has not yet been located. On October 29, 2018, Georgina's 31st birthday, Chief Inspector Miles Ockwell of Sussex Police said, "Today should have been a celebration for Gina's birthday, but instead it's an extremely distressing time for her family and friends." The Gharsallah family marked the sombre occasion with a candlelight vigil at Worthing Station, close to where she was last seen. The same month, Georgina's disappearance was featured on the BBC Crime Watch TV show, where the Crime Stoppers charity offered a £5,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of her suspected abductor. In March 2019, the 1-year anniversary of Georgina's disappearance, her family held another candlelight vigil outside Worthing railway station, and an appeal was scheduled to be broadcast on the BBC's Crime Watch Roadshow on March 12th. A painting of Georgina was also featured in the Unmissable exhibition in London, organised by the Missing People charity to raise the profile of the missing. In the same month, Gharsallah started a petition asking for Worthing Borough Council to halt their plans for Tevelgate to allow for a thorough search to be conducted. Tevelgate had begun to be demolished just 2 days before Georgina vanished, with demolition ongoing until ceasing in June 2018. It is a large site that was scheduled for redevelopment and was anticipated, when completed, to accommodate over 300 apartments, a hotel, food store, gym and shops. At the time, it was filled with rubble and industrial equipment. The site had been a multi-storey car park and had been used by people sleeping rough, and people were known to use the location to do drugs. Andrea spoke about its significance. We have had so many messages from people saying she had been around there. We have 2 sightings on Broadwater Bridge of her seen with 2 angry guys. At the same time, the Tevelgate was being demolished, and we've had so many people saying it's such a coincidence. It has been reported that one witness claimed to have seen Georgina with 2 men at the bottom of Clifton Road on the evening that she disappeared, with one man allegedly displaying aggressive behaviour towards her. Another witness claimed that she saw Georgina with 2 men later that same evening, apparently with both men dragging Georgina across Broadwater Bridge. Broadwater Bridge is right beside the Tevelgate demolition site. However, when police spoke with the latter witness, they denied saying this. Andrea advised, "We suggested to police that they send in sniffer dogs to go in there and do what they have to do. The police said they had no reason to believe she had visited." Simon Dunn from Sussex Police explained that Tevelgate was assessed in the early part of the investigation. However, there was no information linking Georgina to that premises. Chief Inspector Miles Ockwell reiterated this, explaining that Tevelgate was considered as a potential area earlier on in the investigation in reaction to information, but we don't feel we have enough information to justify a thorough search of the site at this stage. Worthing Borough Council rejected the petition to allow the search, and so on Monday, April 15th, 2019, Gharsallah met with supporters outside Tevelgate to protest. She explained, "I believe it's important to rule out Tevelgate before it gets built on, as there is a possibility that something happened to my daughter there." 2 weeks later, on Monday, April 29th, 2019, after being told by Sussex Police and Worthing Borough Council that the site was inaccessible, Gharsallah climbed over the wall into the Tevelgate construction zone in less than 1 minute. She posed the question, how long could it take anyone else? As far as I can tell, search dogs were never deployed to the area, and Sussex Police continue to maintain that there is insufficient information to justify a search of the premises. Also in April 2019, the Worthing Herald newspaper and Sussex Police received a fraudulent ransom note claiming that Georgina was being held hostage. A spokesman said, "Sussex Police and a number of other police forces received a ransom email with a demand on April 14th from an individual regarding the disappearance of Georgina Gharsallah. Following numerous inquiries, the email received is strongly believed to be a hoax." There was also some suggestion that the reporter who originally received the email was suspected of involvement in the hoax. In August 2019, Sussex Police eventually released the second CCTV clip of the woman believed to be Georgina. Although various sources report that the identity of the second woman is known, it is still listed as unconfirmed since she denies it's her. Gharsallah is adamant that the woman to the left of the 2 in the footage is most certainly Georgina, though others are not convinced, primarily due to the woman in the footage wearing different clothing than what Georgina had been wearing in the earlier footage in the Clifton shop. The coat, handbag and boots appear different, and the plastic carrier bags are missing. Despite these changes, Andrea explains, "A mother knows her own daughter without a doubt. No one knows their own daughter better than a mother. I know my daughter's walk. I know my daughter's hair shape. I know the way my daughter swings her arm when she walks. I know my daughter's footstep and cadence. The girl in the CCTV walking through Worthing Town around 4 p.m. on the 7th of March 18 is my daughter Georgina Gharsallah." That same month, on August 14th, Sussex police advised that they were now treating Georgina's disappearance as a homicide, explaining that it is very difficult to believe, on the balance of probabilities, that there is an innocent explanation for her disappearance. DCI Andy Wolstenholme said, "Following a number of vital inquiries to test proof of life, we're unable to conclusively show that Georgina is alive." Andrea was deeply upset by this, saying, "I thought, no, I'm not accepting this. You have no proof of life, but no proof of death either." In October 2019, Crime Stoppers increased their reward to £10,000 for any information which leads to the arrest and conviction of any person responsible for Georgina's death, in the hope of encouraging someone to come forward. On December 22nd, 2019, the Gharsallah family posted an open letter on their Facebook page to then Chief Constable of Sussex Police, Giles York, requesting an independent review of the case. A response was received on January 24, 2020, which the family cite as being unsatisfactory. The family also released a reconstruction of what they believe to be Georgina's last known movements on the day of her disappearance, in conjunction with investigative journalist Donald McIntyre and former DCI Clive Driscoll. Andrea explained that after being repeatedly shut down by Sussex police, my friend and I were like, let's try and do a reconstruction ourselves. It was very, very emotional. The girl, Donna Durandi, 25, looked very much like Georgina. I kept looking at her when she turned herself to the side and when she walked. Donya commended Andrea's strength, explaining that the reconstruction had been emotional. "I am so happy to help. I lost my dad just 8 months ago suddenly, and I can share her sense of loss, but at least I have some small sense of closure. I really hope that this reconstruction can help in some small way to help find the answers her family need." Driscoll noted that everything we can do to bring this tragic case to the public's attention will help. We simply paint the picture of her last hours, what she was wearing, where she went, and where she might have been going. I am convinced that this reconstruction can make a positive difference in the search for Georgina. Sussex police expressed concerns over the reconstruction, claiming that by showing Georgina alive and well 5 to 6 hours after the last confirmed sighting of her in another location could be misleading and potentially harmful to the case. A reconstruction was considered, but given that there is no knowledge of what happened to Georgina after she was last seen, and there is good quality CCTV footage readily available showing Georgina's actual last known movement, it was not necessary. We believe a reconstruction based on speculation is misleading and, at worst, potentially damaging to the investigation. We absolutely understand the family's distress in this situation and share their desire to do all possible to find Georgina. We would always listen and welcome families' suggestions on actions based on what they know about a loved one, but the police must make those final decisions based on all the information available to them at the time. Having said that, I'm not so sure much more damage could be done at this stage. I appreciate that the second clip is officially unconfirmed, but the family are convinced that it shows Georgina. A spokesperson explained that due to the presence of good quality CCTV footage already available of her at the Clifton shop, there was little point in staging a reconstruction, and that there was no credible evidence to suggest that one was necessary. The following month, in February 2020, delivery service Deliveroo announced that they would be displaying missing people posters on their delivery bags in Brighton in the hope that somebody may recognise them. One of the first to be featured is Georgina Gharsallah. The following month, on March 7th, 2020, various schemes came together to mark the 2-year anniversary of Georgina's disappearance. The Gharsallah family set up an incident room as a safe place for witnesses to pass on information if they didn't want to talk to police or Crime Stoppers. Senior Investigative Officer Detective Chief Inspector Andy Wolstenholme said, "I cannot begin to think how difficult not only this day, but the last 2 years have been for the family and friends of Georgina." A podcast called Find Georgina or Where's Georgina was also released by investigative journalist Donald McIntyre and ex-policeman Steve Langridge in the hopes of eliciting information. In a joint effort with Sussex Police, a Crime Stoppers ad van was parked up in South Street Square in Worthing, near to where she was last seen on CCTV. The van displayed images of and information about Georgina, and police spoke with locals. In July 2020, a transaction was debited from Georgina's bank account to Sony PlayStation for a charge of £7.99, though this would not be noticed immediately. That same month, the Gharsallah family asked for an independent review in the case, prompted by police failings, a list of which they submitted to the new Chief Constable of Sussex Police, Georgina. Sussex Police responded to the open letter, largely insinuating that the same questions had been answered in response to the prior open letter to predecessor Giles York. An internal review took place on September 8, 2019, which the Gharsallah family were invited to, and in which Sussex Police allegedly admitted to a multitude of failings. These included loss of CCTV footage, failure to secure CCTV footage, not reviewing CCTV footage for over 12 months, and not placing Georgina on the Interpol watch list for over 18 months after her disappearance. On Wednesday, September 16, 2020, the Gharsallah family conducted a press conference with investigative journalist Donald McIntyre, where it was reported that the relationship between the family and the police had deteriorated. Family raised concerns that race and class played a role in a substandard quality of the investigation into Georgina's disappearance, with Andrea explaining, "I felt Georgina's case wasn't taken as seriously as some others. Was it because of race, her background, her lifestyle and her history? I felt that they hadn't put everything into this case as they would another missing female. We felt it was victim blaming, really, due to her lifestyle and background," suggesting that the Gharsallah family are planning to take legal action against Sussex Police. Donald McIntyre added, "When firemen go missing, as in the tragic case right before Christmas, the resources Sussex threw at that were monstrous. I remember Andrea at the time saying, 'I didn't see those resources when Georgina went missing.' Blue-eyed blonde. I mean, the force and the government and the Prime Minister's office are still allocating 11, 12, 13 million pounds for a missing child, blue-eyed and blonde, in a foreign jurisdiction, and even £1 million to the Ben Needham case, again in a foreign jurisdiction. There is a really important issue here about the allocation of resources." A spokesperson from Sussex Police responded, "The review found that whilst initial inquiries were proportionate and the investigation was escalated appropriately with comprehensive inquiries taking place, there were significant missed opportunities in one aspect. CCTV, however, will refute any suggestion of racial bias in this case." Andrea explained that there were approximately 12 lost segments of CCTV footage identified as a result of the internal review, out of 27 failings she states the family were told about. Sussex police dispute this number, and the family have publicly released a list of them. Acclaimed detective DCI Clive Driscoll, who was credited with solving the murder of Stephen Lawrence, which had remained unsolved for nearly 20 years, was brought in to help the investigation, similar to his role in the Stephen Lawrence murder inquiry. Driscoll said, "The family has been wronged and Georgina didn't get the investigation she deserved. What really concerns me is that if she had blue eyes and was middle class and have a different name, would the investigation have been equally poor?" Sussex Police referred itself to the Independent Office of Police Conduct, or IOPC, due to significant missed opportunities in the investigation. The family requested a meeting with Chief Constable Georgina, who met with them the following month on October 2nd. Andrea reportedly claimed that the meeting was a step in the right direction, though maintained concerns regarding the investigators working on the case. "We have long criticised the force, and the force have been slow to admit their failings. We are concerned that many of the original investigating officers are still on the team, and our trust in their competence is non-existent." Later that month, for Georgina's 33rd birthday, SAODCI Andy Wolstenholme released a police appeal video in which he said, "Today marks another year since Georgina went missing. As a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a friend to so many, I can only imagine the pain each and every person who knew Georgina has gone through during this time." In January 2021, human remains were located at West Wittering Beach, and a few days later, further human remains, including a skull, were located by workmen on the B2141 near Chichester. Sussex police contacted Andrea Gharsallah regarding the finds. Andrea explained, "With any of them, there is always a possibility." Neither were a match to Georgina. This same month, Andrea publicly announced that 3 witnesses had come forward to identify the woman seen with Georgina in the second CCTV clip, and thanked them for their courage in doing so, whilst urging others to follow suit. However, the alleged woman claimed that it wasn't her when spoken to by police. Andrea also took the opportunity to remind people that having information regarding Georgina's last known movements and failing to inform police whilst an investigation is underway is a criminal offence in the UK. As per Section 8 of the Accessories and Abettors Act 1861, a secondary party is one who aids, abets, counsels or procures, assists or encourages, a defendant to commit an offence despite not being a principal offender. A secondary party can also, however, be prosecuted and punished as if they were a principal offender. In October 2021, for Georgina's 34th birthday, SAODCI Andy Wolstenholme released another appeal saying, "This is the 4th birthday Georgina's family have had to spend with the pain and heartbreak of not knowing where she is or what happened to her on that day." Georgina's mother and children planted flowers for her at Clayton Wood Natural Burial Ground in her memory. The following month, in November 2021, MTV aired a documentary on missing people featuring Georgina's case. However, the Gharsallah family have been vocal about the inaccuracies contained within it. On the 4th anniversary of Georgina's disappearance, in March 2022, Andrea publicly expressed that she doesn't want to die not knowing what happened to her daughter. It has been reported that after reading text messages on her phone, setting up a possible meeting to view a flat, police arrested an acquaintance of Georgina and his housemate on suspicion of murder. The 2 were later released with no further action. It is unclear when this took place and how such messages were reviewed without access to Georgina's phone, which has never been located. On December 9th and 10th, family supporter Simon Owens took an opportunity to drive up and down the M5 motorway in his van, displaying Georgina's missing posters along the sides. He stopped at all 12 service stations along the route, spending time at each one to appeal for help and raise awareness of Georgina's case. As of December 2022, there is now a £20,000 reward for information relating to the disappearance of Georgina Gharsallah. Andy Wolstenholme said, "Georgina's family and friends have been desperately seeking information for almost 5 years, and we know there's someone out there who holds the answers to their questions. We hope this increased reward will encourage them to do the right thing and come forward to tell us what happened to Georgina on that day. No matter how small or insignificant you think a piece of information may be, we want to know about it. Our investigation remains open and ongoing, and we will continue to explore all reasonable lines of inquiry that come into us. I have submitted a Freedom of Information request to Sussex Police regarding Georgina's disappearance, but have yet to receive a response, the same as the Laura El Hagrassi case." We've mentioned already that Deliveroo partnered with Missing People to raise awareness of the missing people in the UK, called Ride to Find. I'd like to talk a little bit about that because it's such a simple thing to do. So many businesses could follow suit or devise their own schemes. Small but effective. Reading from the website. Our riders cycle and drive through the UK streets every day, so we are uniquely positioned to highlight missing people in our local communities. Working with Missing People UK and local police, we launched the Ride to Find operation in 2018, putting the faces of missing people on the delivery bags of over 500 Deliveroo riders across major UK cities. In the first year of working together, we were proud to have identified an 18% uplift in traffic to the Missing People UK site, and to date, we have helped return 5 people to their family or friends. Our riders are encouraged to sign up to the Missing People UK text alert service, and this increased the amount of respondents by over 2,000% during our first year together. Our customers can also make a donation to the charity through the Deliveroo app, and we are proud to have contributed over £30,000 to Missing People UK before any donations were added. Deliveroo's Chief Executive Will Shue said, "Working with missing people in 2018 is something we are genuinely proud of at Deliveroo. It also, very quickly, became clear that this partnership was something riders felt very passionate about being part of. I sincerely hope that our partnering for a second time means we help to find more missing people, as well as continue to raise awareness across the country." He emphasised that, for the missing and their loved ones, every second counts, and the more people who see pictures of the missing person, the greater the chance they are found. Missing People Chief Executive Joe Yule said, "This campaign is such a brilliant way of raising awareness in local communities, both of the issues involved in missing and the 186,000 people who go missing every year in the UK. Thank you to Deliveroo for this wonderful partnership." The theories in this case are almost endless due to the distinct lack of information about Georgina's last movements. Andrea explained that police had given the family 7 or 8 hypotheses regarding Georgina's disappearance. They range from missing to murder to being trafficked to being held against her will to suicide and not being found. Each time we see police, they may be working on one of those. As with most cases, we will analyse the theories in 4 sections. The first is suicide. The second, that Georgina left of her own accord. The third being an accident. And the fourth being that foul play was involved. There is no evidence whatsoever that Georgina had any plans to take her own life. She was keen to get her phone working and remain in contact with her family and friends. She regularly saw her children, and despite her recent breakup, she had remained on good terms with her ex and was still seeing him regularly. Although she suffered with social anxiety and had bouts of bulimia, there were no other known mental health concerns, nor anything in her life at the time which could have triggered such a drastic response. In the clip of Georgina at the Clifton store, she appeared in good spirits, chatting and apparently joking with the shopkeeper. Her mother had seen her getting ready that morning, taking time to straighten and do up her hair. If it is to be believed that the woman in the second clip later that same day is Georgina, then she appears to have changed some of her clothing in the intervening hours, suggesting that she had made plans, which would therefore suggest that she had no intention of ending her life. Her family also dismissed this theory as implausible. The second possibility is that Georgina left of her own accord, and like with many other cases, the reasons that make suicide seem unlikely also fit here. She had a loving and supportive family and shared custody of her children, who she loved deeply. We should consider the convenience of her mobile phone suddenly playing up, which could have provided a bit of breathing space if she didn't want to be in contact with people for a while. However, along the same vein, we should also note that she was keen to get her phone fixed, taking it to a shop to seek advice, borrowing one from her mother for the short term, and even planning to pick up a temporary one from her father later that same day. As far as we're aware, she had no issues, which would have prompted her to take off. She had plans for that day, was living with her mother at the time, meaning her disappearance would not have gone unnoticed for very long. She was between jobs at the time, meaning it's unlikely that she had enough cash available to leave, even borrowing a small amount of money from her mother that day. That cash was described only as a couple of pounds, which is unlikely to have gotten her much, not even a ticket on public transport out of town. Again, as far as we know, she only left the house that morning with her handbag and 2 carrier bags, the contents of which we saw on the CCTV footage. Not exactly a great deal if she was planning to leave. However, we should also note that if the woman in the second clip was indeed Georgina, which her family advocate, then she had changed her clothing in the intervening hours, and those carrier bags were subsequently nowhere to be found. What happened to them and their contents? Did the other woman in the clip help her to disappear? Andrea was at work that day, and Georgina's children were with their father, meaning the home she shared at the time with her mother was empty. There is, therefore, nothing to say that Georgina didn't return home in between the first and second CCTV clip. However, if this was true, then it seems like her belongings weren't left there when she did so, since we haven't been made aware that they were at home, which was subsequently searched. It still leaves the question, where did her things go? Regardless of whether or not the woman in the second clip is Georgina, she clearly went somewhere after the shot that morning, and her belongings have never since been located. It has been reported that Georgina has links outside of Worthing, including Brighton and London, so she could have travelled to one of these areas, perhaps meeting with associates who could have helped her to leave. Of note is the fact that Georgina didn't drive and had no access to a vehicle, meaning she was unable to travel far without the help of someone else. Georgina had mentioned to her mother about moving to Brighton, where her sisters lived, so it is likely that she had something which drew her to that area, whether associates or something else. Perhaps more resources should have been spent at promoting the investigation in the Brighton area, rather than confining it solely to the Worthing area in the early stages. Due to her dual nationality, it is possible that Georgina could have travelled back to Libya, though it has been noted that her passport had expired, meaning she would have needed to have had access to fraudulent documentation. Although this is a possibility, there is no motive for it. Georgina had lived her life from the age of 10 years old in the UK. All of her adult life and her children's lives were here. What would the drive be? The family, by their own description, were very westernised, and it just seems somewhat unlikely. It has also been reported that family claim that due to the current political climate and how people are now leaving the country, it's not a safe place to go back there, and the general opinion is that this is not really something to look into. Andrea did consider the possibility that Georgina left of her own accord, saying, "I have wondered if perhaps she went abroad, but she didn't have a passport and she wouldn't leave the boys. She was a devoted mum, she loved her boys." She went on to explain that Georgina would have found a way to contact her if she could, if only for the sake of her sons. "I can't imagine Georgina going off and living another life somewhere, because we were really close. I'm close with all of my daughters. That's why I find it so hard." People say, maybe she just went off and decided she wants a new life. But I don't believe that, especially her being a mum as well. The other consideration under the umbrella theory that Georgina may have left of her own accord is that while doing so, she was not of sound mind. By this I mean she could have been under the influence of something, or she could have had developed amnesia or been experiencing a fugue state. We know that Georgina was known to use cannabis, though it is unlikely that with her normal usage, her mind would have been in so altered a state as to not know what she was doing. It is certainly possible paranoia can develop after prolonged use, though usually under different circumstances, and we have been led to believe that her usage was minimal. For this to be plausible, we would also expect that she would have had to have purchased a substantial quantity in the time between when she was seen in Clifton Food and Wine Store, used it, and then disappeared. The problem here is that we've already discussed her finances, and subsequent financial investigation revealed that her accounts had not been accessed. Unless she was owed some money, which she collected, or was fronted some substance, it's unlikely that this is what happened. The alternative considerations also fall within the accident theory. Georgina was not known to have had any mental health concerns other than social anxiety and bulimia, which could have triggered a mental break or a psychotic episode. She appeared well put together in the earlier footage that has been released. Despite people noting that she appeared too animated and if she was under the influence of something, when the shopkeeper was spoken to, and from what I interpret, she was just an animated person, excitable, and was acting in good spirits. If Georgina had an accident after this, it still begs the question as to where she had been for all those hours. An accident would have had to have happened relatively quickly after she left the store to prompt her to miss her citizens' advice and job centre appointments, and also her meeting with her father. This seems implausible, given that she turned towards the town centre after leaving the store, in full view of countless people in broad daylight. It's unlikely she had a fall without being noticed, and her belongings should still have been found. If she had been acting strangely, indicative of confusion or paranoia, this likely would also have been picked up on, and someone would have remembered this. So, sadly then, the most likely scenario is that something bad happened to Georgina at the hands of another, and this is why neither her nor her belongings have been located. Sussex police certainly believe this to be the case. Although initially a spokesperson had explained that at this time there is nothing to indicate that Georgina is deceased. However, it will obviously remain one of the potential hypotheses. A further spokesperson went on to say later in the investigation that it's very difficult to believe, on the balance of probabilities, there is an innocent explanation for her disappearance. Of the decision to record the case as a homicide, Andy Wolstenholme explained, "This was in no way intended to take hope away from Georgina's family and friends. However, Georgina was someone who would spend a lot of time on her phone and on social media, but all of this and any financial transactions on her bank accounts stopped the day she went missing. A number of vital inquiries to test proof of life have been conducted, but to date, none of these have been able to conclusively show that Georgina is alive. I am led to believe there is not an innocent reason for her disappearance. Sadly, I have had to consider the possibility that Georgina has come to harm at the hands of someone else." He continued, "While Sussex police continue to look for Georgina and hope above all else that we can find her safe and well, I have taken the decision to record her disappearance as a homicide. We know this has been incredibly difficult and upsetting for all of Georgina's loved ones to hear, but it doesn't mean we've given up on looking for her. We still have a dedicated team of officers who are committed to finding out what happened to Georgina and giving her family the answers they deserve." Investigative journalist Donald McIntyre agrees. Whilst on the one hand saying there is no evidence that Georgina has been murdered, there is no proof of life, I get that, he says, but there is also no proof of death. It's all conjecture. Georgina Gharsallah is still missing, but he also went on to state that, "I believe, sadly, she is probably dead, but there is no evidence either way. She is missing, possibly murdered." Again, foul play is a wide umbrella that encompasses a multitude of theories. Andrea herself doesn't know what to think. "I don't know what has happened. People have speculated about her getting into trouble with drugs, gangs, or being people trafficked. I don't know. All these different theories go through my mind over and over. Sometimes I think, if anything bad had happened to her, maybe she took a lift from somebody bad. She could be too trusting. She probably wouldn't have thought about the bad things that could happen if she got into a car. I do wonder, are you alive still, Georgina? Are you alive? That goes through my mind," she says, "because I know she would have come home to her boys if she could." The thought of her lying somewhere out there unfound is what distresses me the most. If anyone has done anything to Georgina, I definitely want justice, she said. Potentially the biggest theory in this section is that Georgina was more heavily involved in the drug scene than previously believed, and that she came to harm as a result of people she associated with or because of a potential debt she may have owed. Many of these theories are sent to Andrea via the Facebook page she has set up and can be quite graphic. Andrea explained, "A lot of it is based on the same story, that she has been taken by a drugs gang and they have killed her. We've had stories from people where she's got involved in a drug gang and killed. Awful stories. They burned her, cut her up. The last one was that they had cremated her. They said they'd heard that Georgina owed some money for drugs and hadn't paid it, so they killed her and scattered her all over. It's distressing. Part of you thinks, did something like that happen? I try not to think about the bad things like that." As we've mentioned, Georgina was known to use cannabis, but there is no indication that she was involved in harder drugs, with Andrea emphasizing that she was never aware of her hanging around with a drug gang. Of course, children, even adult children, don't always tell their parents everything, and she may have felt that this would be frowned upon. Her sisters were all in steady careers, and her family seemed to be doing really well, with Georgina potentially feeling a little less so. So while it's not out of the realm of possibility, there is no solid evidence to back this up. One point of contention is the fact that it has been reported that Georgina took with her a handheld, portable gaming device on the day she disappeared. This has been described as a Nintendo DS or Switch. Andrea explained that she had taken the box with her, which can be seen in the Clifton shop footage when she left home that morning. It's unclear whether this contained the device itself, as is generally believed, or whether it was a box she was used to storing the phones or other smaller electronics. Taking this into consideration, along with the request to loan money from her mother and her distress at the fact that her phone wasn't working, could this possibly indicate that she was trying to make arrangements to pay somebody? Again, this is simple speculation since there is no supporting information. If Georgina had become involved in the hard drugs scene, then it stands to reason that she would have come into contact with hardened criminals and likely gangs and possibly even organised crime groups or OCGs. That being said, though, it seems highly unlikely that Georgina was of a level to cause enough concern to have been disappeared. Usually these things tend to happen when people are in significant debts, have wronged a member of a gang, are suspected to have stolen from them, or be communicating with the police, or if they're dealing and have allowed a bad debt to build up. But none of these seem to fit with what we know about Georgina. Granted, one thing we do know is that we don't know everything, so it's not entirely off the table. One person is lurking around the Reddit threads discussing Georgina's case. I won't mention his username because I don't think there's a point to it, but I've seen him or her in multiple threads. The username insinuates he's a male, possibly born in 92, but he's quite adamant at pointing fingers back at Georgina herself. One of his comments says, "As somebody who used to attend the same gatherings and parties as her, mainly down Cheswood Road, I can confirm she was indeed a drug taker. There's no ifs or buts about it. No evidence required. Everyone that knew her knew about her lifestyle." On another thread, he claims that she was involved in county lines. For those that don't know, at least in the UK, county lines is a tactic that has been used increasingly in recent times by drug dealers and gangs whereby they take a vulnerable member of society, usually a child, and get them to transport the drugs across the county lines to be dealt in another area, exploiting police county line weaknesses and jurisdiction weaknesses. This is usually used for teenagers, but drugs gangs have also been known to target vulnerable adults and exploit them similarly. On this, Andrea explains that Georgina didn't attend parties in the years prior to her disappearance. This had been more so in her early 20s. "I by no means try to make Georgina out to be perfect," said Andrea, "like many people. Yes, she obviously had dabbled with recreational drugs, but wasn't at all an addict. I would surely have seen that. Whilst it has been noted that Georgina had some mental health conditions and that she could have been naive and was perhaps over-trusting, I've not seen anything else that would indicate she was quite as vulnerable as many other county lines victims appear to be. One key difference is that she has a large and close-knit support network around her, something which is often lacking in the former cases. One person in particular noted that there are London gangs who have satellites in Worthing. They are notorious in the town for taking over the residences of vulnerable young women and turning them into hubs of drug dealing. However, Georgina was living with her mother at the time, so it's not really that viable, really. The Reddit user that is going out of his way to point fingers at Georgina, at least to me, appears very suspicious, unless he or she has spoken with police and provided evidence to back up these claims. Something which I sincerely doubt. Although it is entirely possible that the rumours of her drug use are true, it accomplishes nothing to spout this type of stuff publicly. If you don't have the courage or inclination to speak with the right people about it, it only serves to darken Georgina's character with baseless accusations. If you've got the goods, then deliver. Moving on, some people have considered similarities between Georgina's disappearance and those of a number of other women who disappeared nearby. For example, 19-year-old Leah Croucher, who disappeared a year later in February 2019. Missing for over 3.5 years, Leah's remains were located in October 2022 in a local property. The person suspected of murdering her committed suicide shortly after her disappearance, and there is no known link between Georgina, Leah, nor the suspect in her case. Similarities have also been drawn between Georgina's case and those of Leah Ware and Alexandra Morgan. They were both single mothers in their early 30s and went missing from East Sussex in 2021. A male has since been found guilty of murdering the two women in unrelated circumstances, though as of January 2023, the remains of Leah Ware have never been located. Again, there is no link between Georgina and Ware or Morgan, nor the one who murdered them, but I've seen no evidence that he, nor the suspect in the Leah Croucher murder, have been officially ruled in or out as suspects in Georgina's disappearance. Whatever happened to Georgina, it is worth noting that there are ways to get around Worthing without being captured by the various CCTV cameras. Granted, these are usually not the safest routes, and many are often used by those in the drug scene or potentially homeless persons sleeping rough, but it is worth considering whether Georgina traversed through one of these routes, either willingly or against her will. Due to the town's history of smuggling, locals report there are many properties in the area which have basements connected to tunnels which run underground throughout the town. There are also other entrances to the tunnels, largely unknown by some sections of society, some of which have been described as being close to the area where Georgina was last seen, on CCTV in Chapel Road, including at least one on Warwick Street, which still leads underground. One person, by the name Lucy Light 777, explains that, "I am local to Worthing, and there is a pub with entry to the underground system, but someone would have to know Worthing like the back of their hand to go down there. I used to work with a pub landlord, and it goes down for miles underground." Another user claims that the Dome Cinema also has loads of tunnels underneath. Whether or not these tunnels have had a role to play in Georgina's disappearance is not known, but it certainly bears thinking about. Worthing is also sandwiched between national woodland and the seafront, posing a multitude of other dangers or potential methods by and areas in which to dispose of remains, get lost, or have an accident. And let us not prematurely rule out the Tevelgate site. Whilst we have no direct evidence that links Georgina or the circumstances surrounding her disappearance to that area, it would have been a good place to dispose of remains, knowing it was scheduled for and in the process of redevelopment. One source indicates that the area was scanned and anomalous results were reported. However, I find this hard to believe because this would give the reasonable suspicion the police needed to direct a search and excavate the site. I'm not sure where this comes from, but it's entirely possible, however unlikely, as in the Springfield 3 case. Continuing on the drugs theory is the possibility that there was an accidental overdose or death by misadventure, with those around Georgina concealing her body rather than report the matter. Given the people that this theory suggests she may have associated with, it is certainly possible, though as we have mentioned, there is nothing to suggest she was an avid drug user. Another theory under the foul play header is that of human trafficking. Andrea explained that Georgina was a trusting person who took everyone at face value, but she could also be naive. I believe she could have been abducted or even trafficked into the sex trade. On the police hypothesis of the same, Andrea explained, a while back they thought she could have been trafficked out of the country, but other investigators said that's very unlikely. They don't traffic victims out, they traffic them in. I don't necessarily agree with this point. I think it's just as likely that people are trafficked out of as into the UK. We've recently considered the case of Laura El Hagrassi on this channel, where police have again listed the case as a homicide, when trafficking out of the UK is a distinct possibility. This theory has gained traction amongst some on the Facebook page, with one person suggesting that trafficking has become a mega business. However, Andrea goes on to say that I have gone through different stages. We had the trafficking, the suicide, each one I have dismissed. And finally, we should consider that in the vast number of cases in which women disappear or are murdered, the culprit is usually known to and close to the victim, with many being the significant other. As with all of the other theories in this case, there is no evidence against any of Georgina's ex-partners, and it has been reported that she maintained good relationships with them post-breakup, even continuing to socialise with them. We should also note that Georgina's ex-partner was cleared from suspicion by police and his home searched. There is no suggestion that there was anybody new in her life, no new romantic interests, so this leaves us back at square one with not knowing what happened to Georgina or who, if anyone, was responsible. Georgina's family are plagued each day with the uncertainty of knowing what happened to their treasured daughter, sister, and mother. Andrea explains, when people ask me what my gut feeling is that happened, I say every possibility goes through my head, but I still hold on to that thread of hope, for hope is all we have. Hope for Georgina. I'm going to leave you now with a description of Georgina and some final words from family, friends, and investigators in the case. Georgina took pride in and put a lot of effort into her appearance. She favoured skinny jeans and always liked to look girly and elegant without too much makeup. She was a fast walker, and at the time of her disappearance, Georgina was described as a 30-year-old female with a light complexion and a slim build. She has mixed Caucasian and Arabic heritage and was described as looking white with Arabian features. She was 5'4" or 165 centimeters tall and of a slim build. She had long, shoulder-length dark hair, which, if not straightened, was often worn in a top knot or a messy bun. She has a Monroe piercing above her top left lip, so named after Marilyn Monroe's mole. She was last seen wearing a fitted grey River Island coat with a large white faux fur collar and fluffy trimmed hood and black skinny jeans, a grey jumper and a cream scarf. She wore ankle boots that were either flat-soled and grey or chunky-heeled and black. She was carrying either a black or grey satchel bag, an orange plastic carrier bag, and a white Tesco plastic carrier bag. The bags contained a soda can, paperwork or letters, a variety of mobile phones, including a Nokia Lumia 520, a vape, and potentially a white-coloured Nintendo DS in a box. Georgina has dual British and Libyan nationality and speaks both English and Arabic, with potentially also some Albanian. Notably, Georgina can look drastically different from photograph to photograph, so please look carefully at the different pictures in case you recognise one of them. If seen today, Georgina would be 35 years old. Another tragic challenge facing the family is that Georgina's father, Gassim, has now been diagnosed with early onset progressive Alzheimer's disease. Andrea explains, he still sort of remembers Georgina now, but he's going to reach a stage where he doesn't remember her, and I think that's so sad. Andrea explained, I feel I cannot grieve as it's not the same as losing a child to death. When a child dies, it's awful, but you know what's happened to them. But we don't know what happened to Georgina, and we might never know, and that's the most fearful thing. How can I give up when there's still that little bit of hope? When someone you love goes missing, it completely turns your world upside down. It's like there is a missing jigsaw piece in your family. I can't move forward because I'm scared of leaving Georgina behind. Not knowing what has happened to Georgina has held us back in life. Andrea writes, ambiguous loss is known to be one of the most stressful losses of grief ever. Each day we get up and live that same story again and again. Each day we desperately try to think what else we can do to keep our girl's story out there. The posters, the billboards, the radio talk shows, TV, media, newspaper appeals, searches, Facebook worldwide appeals, petitions, open police letters. It never stops for us. It's an around-the-clock job. Despite knowing how important it is to maintain some hope, she honestly explains that it's hard to hold on to hope some days. I don't feel hopeful about anything. I just feel that it's going to go on and on. Along with the other emotions, perhaps the most haunting of which Andrea experiences is guilt. Even Georgina's sisters experience this phenomenon that is survivor's guilt, with younger sister our age saying, I get this thing a bit like guilt that I'm fine, because I don't think that Georgina is. We were very close. We all used to see each other every week. She had issues, but she was a beautiful person inside and out. I miss her more than anything. Her older sister Sarah dedicated a short verse to Georgina called Until We Meet Again. Those special memories of you will always make me smile. If only I could have you back for just a little while. Then we could sit and talk again, just like we used to do. You always meant so very much, and will always do too. The fact that you are no longer here will always cause me pain. But you're forever in my heart, until we meet again. Her father has also expressed his sentiment about Georgina. My lovely great daughter Georgina, God bless you and look after you all the time. I love you, my lovely daughter, and I miss you so much. Police have also offered their words on the case, with DCI Andy Wolstenholme saying, I find it incredibly disheartening that there is no one who will have the courage to come forward and tell us the truth, even anonymously, that will help us get the answers that are so deserved by Georgina's family. He reminded people that it's not too late to give your information. Andrea added, people say, sometimes people's loyalties change and they come forward with information about what has happened. Anything is vital, and it might give us the lead, just that little lead that we need. Never think that the information isn't worthy enough. It is. Asked what she would say to Georgina if she was able to hear or read it, Andrea says, my prayer is that Georgina is alive and still out there somewhere. If she is reading this, I want to tell her, please get in touch with us to let us know you're safe. Without you, there is a massive hole in our lives. We love you, we miss you, and we want you home. She explains, when we are young and start growing up and raising a family, we're not taught that our children are only lent to us for a given time. We assume they are ours forever. We don't for 1 minute think we will lose them before we depart from this life. Supporters of the Find Georgina campaign rally to give what support they can to the Gharsallah family, with one, Fiona Bulby, stating, My son was missing for 17 months and still not home, but located alive. Please do not give up. Share info to expat pages abroad. Somebody in a country a long way away spotted my son and took a photo after 17 months. Philip Colvus added a similar anecdote. A friend of mine vanished for 5 years and eventually just reappeared. I was the only one who wouldn't accept he was dead. The family do have a GoFundMe set up to support their efforts in the search for Georgina, and they also have an Amazon wishlist which contains resources which can help with the printing and distribution of posters. Links will be in the description if you are moved to contribute. There is also a £20,000 reward in this case. If you have any information relating to the disappearance of Georgina Gharsallah, please use the contact information in the description box below to get it to those who can act on it. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to hear a little bit more about Georgina's case. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time. Bye.